Welcome to the Energy Efficiency in Public Buildings and Infrastructure Program podcast, Shaping South Africa's Energy Future. In each episode, we talk with industry leaders and technical experts, sharing real-world lessons to help public sector institutions advance their energy journeys. Today, we're joined by Vodacom to explore how a leading telecom operator balances energy resilience, operational performance, and decarbonization.
Hi, my name is Gillian Maree and I am with the National Business Initiative. And today I'm going to be in conversation with Shobana Singh, who's a managing executive at the Vodacom Group and who's going to be talking to us about a wide-ranging issues around energy efficiency. We know that the South African energy system is under strain and it's a central topic of conversation within the country. But we want to move today's conversation beyond talking about policy and what we do into implementation. And we're going to be spending some time reflecting on Vodacom's journey and what we can learn from what Vodacom has done over many, many years to engage with these issues. So thank you, Shobana, for joining us today.
Afternoon, Julian, and thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Great. So let's start it up at a fairly high level from a Vodacom perspective and how you're seeing some of these bigger signals that are coming from government in the energy landscape and how you're responding to them and how they align to Vodacom's work.
I think from a Vodacom perspective, we welcome, the initiatives from government to enable more IPPs to be able to connect to the grid. For us, this means greater availability of renewable energy sources, as well as the fact that they're starting to decarbonize the grid, as we currently know. I think the sentiments from government radiate really well with us and almost cement the journey we've been on from a Vodacom perspective over the last 2 decades, which basically looks at a resilient strategy. It looks at us enabling our business growth through sustainable practices. And, from the perspective of alignment, things like our energy initiative practices and projects, our investment into on-site renewables, our partnerships with PPAs, as well as the monitoring and management, which has gotten a lot more sophisticated over time through smart meters, IoT technologies, as well as the enablement of data-driven decisions, as well as responses through AI, has been pivotal to our journey.
So it's really encouraging to hear that there's so much alignment with what government is doing. And I suppose this is a good point for us to kind of drill down a little bit more into Vodacom's operations and how energy efficiency and energy initiatives are playing out. Yeah. So perhaps if you can reflect on some of that for me.
Yeah, our energy spend is significantly high. You're looking at energy consumption of around about 600 to 620 gigawatt hours annually. So that's significant. But from an infrastructure perspective, we've broken up into a network of radio base station sites, data centers, as well as our office, retail, and transport components. The access network is probably our hungriest, even though distributed across the geographies. They tend to be, from an individual perspective, the sites themselves don't consume a large amount of power, but collectively they start adding up and they constitute about 80% of our energy consumption. The data centers are around 10 to 12%, and the rest within the office and transport environments.
So that's quite amazing. I mean, 80% for one aspect is quite something. So how does that energy demand then play out across your network?
In terms of how we have formulated our strategy, I think the first thing we've done as a company, we've made sure that our strategy speaks to people and planet. So basically connecting for greater good. And the second thing we've done is protection of planet. And then we've aligned all our goals, which includes our energy efficiency and energy management portfolio, to speak to the same. I think one of the biggest goals we've had is to make sure that we net zero on emissions by 2035. which if you think about our network itself, which is distributed across South Africa, is not an easy feat. So what we've done is we've taken cognizance of things like rising energy costs, things like, building resilience, especially with regards to load shedding. I think when you look at things like the rising energy costs, you look at the issues on supply and demand that we kind of have now with the geopolitical situations that we see globally. Building resilience has been key from our perspective in terms of ensuring that we have a mix of energy sources, there's security of supply, and that we ensure that decarbonization of our network is at the core of what we do from a business imperative perspective.
So those are very useful reflections to make. And from my side, I think it's nice to see that your focus is very much on resilience and competitiveness of the company. You're not really taking this on as a compliance issue. You're focusing on longer term resilience. Would that be fair to say?
We are more about doing what's right and driving a sustainable agenda. We are driving all efforts towards our net zero targets, whilst having absolutely no impact on our customers, to ensure that we have network uptime and 24/7 service. So for us, those are the big imperatives from a Vodacom perspective. So security of supply, resilience on our network, reliability, those become part of our strategic mantras.
And if I can pick up on the point you've just made about your 2035 net zero target, I mean, that's incredibly ambitious. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about that.
I think that from our perspective has been some of the key successes in terms of seeing a lot of the initiatives to fruition in terms of achieving a 2035 strategy. I'll give you a specific point. Of late, we actually have included this target into the key performance indicators as well as the long-term incentives of leadership. So they don't become this thing that sits on the side, but rather something that is ingrained in terms of all of their initiatives in achieving goals.
Would you be able to share a couple of examples or an example of where Vodacom's energy efficiency or resilience interventions have had some measurable business value for you?
There's been a number of projects. We've had, as I said to you, we've had quite a long-term view on this. We started, for the most part, on looking at energy efficiency. So use what you actually need, which means invest in tech that is less energy hungry. We've had, shifts in terms of our infrastructure. Something as simple as changing LED lighting throughout our entire real estate has seen 10 to 15% reduction on the office energy spend. We looked at integrating one of the largest, I think, commercial on-site solar installations. We were ambitious enough to look at a almost 6.5 megawatt plant that integrates into quite a complex campus in the Midrand HQ, where we've integrated into the offices, into the data centers, and annually basically produce almost 10.5 gigawatt hours of clean solar power. That came with its own challenges, but was built in less than 18 months, which for infrastructure that's almost 25 years old was quite an incredible achievement. And that was through just choosing a good partner from a supply chain perspective, controlling things like logistics, and getting buy-in from all the stakeholders that are housed, which is the tech teams, the retail teams on the actual site itself.
So some of the stuff can be extremely complex and extremely difficult to do. I mean, you've given some big numbers of the investments that you've made, the impact it's had on customers, but I think that doesn't quite touch on some of that complexity that you've had to deal with. And constraints that still remain within the space. So perhaps if you can just reflect on some of what those constraints are that you still have.
Yeah, even though we've made good progress with regards to 100% renewable electricity target, we've seen that scaling energy efficiency basically across thousands of telecom sites has remained a challenge for us. From our perspective, things like we spoke about grid instability, high capital costs of retrofitting some of those sites has led to us having to consider balancing almost sustainability versus affordability. So it's a journey that we've embarked on as far as the technology upgrades are concerned. We've looked at innovations, like I said, around smart metering and monitoring response times. So the complexity around this is quite significant.
I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit, because one of the things the National Business Initiative does as well is we try and support the public sector where we can. And they're also very engaged with energy efficiency. There's a lot of questions to be asked within public buildings and public resources. And I'm wondering if any of the work that you've done, if you can reflect maybe of how that might be relevant for some of the lessons and some of the work that the public sector is doing.
Yeah, I see the public sector institutions almost facing similar challenges that we would as corporates. They have the same challenges with regards to energy resilience. They have the same challenges with regards to distributed infrastructure, aging infrastructure, budget constraints, and their need for uninterrupted services. So I think it's important for them to have clear goals. Those goals need to be driven by leadership. That's been a key success factor for us. You need to write this into your long-term strategy. I don't think it's going to be achieved, almost instantaneously. That's the one thing that has driven a lot of our success. It's almost the patience of getting through the various phases of your implementation plan. I think public institutes like hospitals, like schools, like government offices need to start prioritizing both efficiency as well as the reliability of being an always-on environment. And they need to be able to balance the integration of kind of renewable energy as well as ensuring that they have uninterrupted service. So similar to us, where we've looked at the fact that we want to introduce a energy mix and get cleaner and cleaner in terms of our energy sources. They would still need to couple the introduction of renewables together with things like diesel generators, which and battery backups, which is going to be part of their almost hybridized solution towards getting to an end goal. I think budgets are a huge obstacle, whether you're sitting in a corporate that is doing well or whether you're in the public sector. And I think the often tight budget environment allows the public institutions to possibly think out of the box. So whether they're rolling out solar or looking at efficient cooling or smart metering, to look at basically how they can phase some of this in. We have over, I would say, almost a 15-year period had long-range planning in terms of, priority projects that we put in play in order to get the mix. And maybe that is some of the ways that they can tackle the budget constraint issues. And maybe lastly, I think public institutions can actually leverage partnerships with lots of the different local utilities, the private sector, private investors, NGOs. They can, accelerate the adoption of efficiency practices or renewable energy resources through partnerships that fulfill, R&D initiatives or research and development initiatives, looking at monitoring and management from a smart metering perspective. And I think the adoption of AI, because they sit in an ideal, almost want to say time, where integration of AI platforms will give them the leverage in order to be able to make good data-driven decisions for themselves in the future.
I want to pick up over there very quickly. I think there's a very useful point that you make about an always-on environment. And we forget that there's a lot of public infrastructure that has the same issues. I think those are really valuable reflections around similar constraints that you have and problems that you faced with this wide geography of issues as well. Yeah. So I think there's more in common. And more lessons that can be learned than we initially may think. Yeah.
I'll give you a public-private partnership Vodacom has done with the city of Johannesburg from a traffic light perspective. So JRA, so roads agency, and ourselves partnered in terms of lighting up robots that basically have power issues. They have power issues not because the council has not maintained the infrastructure. There's vandalism, there's theft. And what we've done is the Adopt a Robot project, where everything within our vicinity, we've powered up that could be linked, to our infrastructure, whether that be from actual grid power, solar, or through our backup scenarios. And that basically has been infectious. You've seen many other corporates around the Waterfall area, Monte Casino, all of those starting to adopt a similar strategy. So those are some of the success stories from a partnership perspective that public and private can continue to do. Small wins, but they make a big impact at the end of the day.
I think that's a perfect example because it's how you break these complex operational issues into manageable chunks.
Our journey over the last 2 decades has been driven by our overarching energy policy and a firm strategy around energy management using a multi-tiered approach or multi-tiered model. From our perspective, we've ensured that our goals and investment aligns to energy efficiency projects, on-site renewables, power purchase agreements, smart monitoring and management, and innovation technologies, such as, new sources, whether you're talking hydrogen, whether you're talking about immersion cooling, those type of things have driven us towards our goal of achieving our net zero target to 2035. I think importantly, what's served us really well in the journey is that we've already, through our resilient strategy and decarbonization, we've already achieved 100% renewable energy procurement across our operations. And that's not just South Africa, that's across the group.
If I may, I think it's useful to pick up on that because setting a 2035 net zero target is incredibly ambitious in a difficult operating environment. So I think, reflect a little bit on that because that's an ambitious target that extends beyond just simple energy efficiency. You've had to do an extraordinary array of things to make sure that you keep that target in place. It's less than 10 years away.
Yeah, I think it's the balancing act between, I think we spoke about it a little bit before, but it's about the balancing act between doing what's right for the business, doing what's right for the customers we serve, doing what's right for the environment in which we operate in. And when that lands with leadership, as well as the fact that there's firm commitment against the target, the efforts get driven towards achieving that.
And it makes it exciting as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You've spoken about how Vodacom hasn't done this on its own and the role that government has played working with you. Perhaps just build on that a little bit because I think partnerships in this space are so incredibly important to success.
Once we also saw the success of some of the installations we've done, and specifically the solar installations we've done in Cape Town and Johannesburg, and you could actually see the financial benefit. We got a lot more investment from the capital, investment committees, from the leadership. And I think there's also a sense of pride from the leadership perspective to be able to speak about the successes we've made in our energy agenda. That also has almost ignited more than just, a strategy. It's become a passion, and green by design is not a outside thought. It's something that's completely internal to our DNA at this point in time.
And I think that's such an incredible reflection because these are intimidating targets when we set them. So breaking them down into those meaningful but yet implementable chunks makes such a difference to continue that journey.
Setting the audacious goal of becoming net zero by 2035 with the complexity of our infrastructure is by itself a project, if I can put it that way. So what we did was, once we had the target, we actually broke the target into a operationalized plan to be able to meet the strategic goal. And that in itself saw us looking at a multi-pronged approach, which is, as I said, take what you need, efficiency first, as a fundamental to what we do, whether that is, upgrading new equipment, replacing end-of-life equipment with, low energy using infrastructure, or partnering with suppliers that speak the same or have the same value system as ourselves. We then looked at how we integrate on-site renewables, but we were always very well aware that it will not be an either-or scenario. It will be a hybridized model over a period of time. And so feeding these alternative energy sources within our infrastructure became almost a organic growth in terms of the differentiating energy sources, with us leaning more towards, renewables at that through the journey. What we also realized is you can't do it all yourself. So partnerships with local government, in terms of energy trading, whether it was partnerships with independent power providers, green independent power providers, those and investing in power purchase agreements, those all became part of the actual makeup. And then not only implementing smart metering on our own and making sure that we enable data-driven decision-making in order to get better and better and do continuous improvement within the cycle. What we've also done is we started partnering with governments, with other corporates in terms of solutioning and building solutions. So everybody basically can tap into the smart metering platforms or solutions that we have. I think importantly for us, one of the big goals we said as a key strategic driver is we made sure that every single operator across our group is 50,001 compliant. So basically, there's an energy management framework that serves as the baseline, and you make sure you get better and better as you move forward. And then the role government plays, and that is both at the national, provincial, and a local level, in terms of making sure there's synergies across. You cannot build a solar plant of 6.5 megawatts worth of power and not have that integrate into the local environment within which you operate. You cannot build it without looking at the laws that govern the establishment of such a large, solar installation. So we've continued to basically lobby with government. We've had good success in terms of Vodacom's relationship with government in terms of moving some of these agendas forward.
So I think it's also a nice opportunity to pick up a discussion around Vodacom as a technology company as well, and the role that technology can play in this space. And I wonder if you've got any reflections on that for us.
That has been I think, phenomenal journey for us. The partnerships we have with the likes of IoT.next and Mezzanine in the Vodacom umbrella, we've seen a lot of success in terms of the platforms business. So with regards to things like monitoring and management, which is a key component of your energy management strategy. If you can't monitor something, you can't manage it. From that perspective, we've seen the evolution of things like smart meters, connected platforms, the early response systems in terms of detection and being able to create alerts and respond timeously as far as that's concerned. They integrate into smart dashboards. And I think those type of things start helping many businesses with real-time data in order to respond accordingly.
And gains from whether it's energy efficiency or water efficiency are incredibly valuable, and developing tools to be able to do that really does add a great deal of value.
For me, I don't think you can have a robust strategy, whether that's energy, water, waste, even your impact on environment, if you can't measure and monitor what you're doing. I think it's a fundamental in any strategy that you embark on from a water, waste and energy perspective.
And that ultimately links back to the targets that you set yourselves and the ambitions that you have and your ability to understand how quickly you are moving towards those.
I mean, continuous improvement is based off where you last at. And if you don't know where that is, it's very difficult to be very deliberate around where to next. And this is what the smart platforms give us, the ability to be able to reflect on progress and be able to set our targets going forward, but also be able to prioritize things like your activities, your budgets, your business cases around data-driven business cases.
Yeah. And I think that fits so nicely with the Vodacom approach to this around breaking things up into measurable chunks, into manageable chunks, which you can then make measurable chunks, which makes it easier to understand how they're all fitting together.
I think the more visibility we've created around where we sit from a monitoring and measurement perspective, even to our leadership, probably the more investment as well as conversations we've had around it. Because when people can start seeing where you're at and the value the initiatives are going to give you, the more you find the investment flowing or the support flowing from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. But I want to reflect as well here. You're doing this in an environment that traditionally has been male dominated, or where we tend to see less women in these roles. And I wonder if it's something that you can just pick up on, and how you've managed to carve a really creative and fulfilling space for you in Vodacom.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's always an uncomfortable conversation. I think that the gender agenda is one not unique to energy. I think it's unique sometimes to the technology space in totality. But I've been privileged to work for an organization that puts gender equity at the forefront of their strategy. When I look at things like our gender targets, which is looking at equity for all, it leaves you with a sense of pride, because you can actually see somebody like myself being a product of that. So the investment from a leadership perspective, the coaching, the mentoring, the support, I almost want to say I've found from how I've grown in the organization, for me, the sponsorship has been probably fundamental to my success. When there's a belief in your ability to be able to execute, irrespective of kind of gender or background, there is a commitment from our leadership to back you up. And that's probably been the biggest success factor from my side. So I think when I look back, it's been a tough journey. I think I spoke about this last year at a Just Transition conference, where I just said that the journey from a just energy transition needs to include a just gender transition as well, or to become gender just from that perspective, because less than 15%, even today, less than 15% of the representation is female when it comes to the energy space, which is actually it's criminal to a large degree. From my perspective, like I said, I've been fortunate. It's sponsorships, it's mentorships, it's grit, it's perseverance. I've been told no so many times. If I tell you how many times I've asked for investment and it was like, just come back another year, you just got to keep going at it. You also got to grow in confidence. And I think the confidence comes with the mentorship, the sponsorship that you get within the organization. And I think the fact that our organization is quite deliberate in terms of, female empowerment and having a voice at the table and not having it quietened is probably been one of the things I'm most grateful for working for Vodacom from my perspective. So that's just been a huge part of why my passion has grown rather than receded, and why I've also been able to lift as I rise, because there's been many other females within the energy space that has basically been successful in our company. Our AI engineer from an energy management perspective is a female. Our energy management, portfolio manager is female, which has been just phenomenal to see.
And I think that's such an important reflection on representation, and why being able to see women in these roles is important, because it's both provided you the support, but also then giving you the opportunity to provide that back again.
Yeah, my advice to ladies out there is don't give up. Keep pushing forward, shine even through the rain. Because it pays off in the long run. I said, patience on strategy. I think in growth, it's exactly the same thing. You're going to jump over hurdles. You're going to break through, mountains, but it's all part of the journey. I think not giving up and not expecting almost instant gratification is part of the growth and resilience as well as success you can get.
So, Shobana, this has been a fantastic discussion, and we've covered a wide range of topics. And I wonder, in conclusion, if there's anything that you would like to leave the audience with. What for you really sticks top of mind?
That no matter what you embark on, and no matter how scary the goal looks from an ambition perspective, that you need to develop the perseverance, the patience, the grit in order to knock it off bit by bit. I don't think there's a silver bullet when it comes to many things in life. Energy being one of those things, growing in leadership another, and therefore I think you need an arsenal of skills and values in order to be able to execute against your passion or your goals. So my advice to anybody listening to this podcast is there's no quick wins, there's no easy fixes, and set yourself a clear goal, develop a structured way to do it, and just keep at it. Just follow through, and you're almost guaranteed to see the silver lining at the end of that.
And I think that's a very optimistic note to wrap this discussion up. So thank you very much for joining us today and having an incredibly rich and varied discussion. It's been fantastic. And thank you for demonstrating that Vodacom's journey is not just about operations. It's about resilience. It's about long-term goals and staying the path and the rewards that come with that.